We're going to have a look at the greatest masterpiece of the Northern Renaissance, the Ghent Altarpiece, which dates from 1432 from the Northern Renaissance.
It's fabulous. It is absolutely breathtaking. And it's really complicated.
It is. It's made up of many, many panels. It's a polyptych. And those panels are connected by hinges, so they open and close.
Which means that we actually see this set of paintings in two distinct ways. We either see it opened or closed. And this is important because I think it would be closed much of the year and then opened on feast days as a kind of revelation.
This would have had an elaborate frame.
There's some controversy about actually who painted it. This is generally ascribed to Jan van Eyck. Some suggest that his brother Hubert may have actually painted it or begun it, and then others suggest that actually the frame was constructed by Hubert van Eyck. The frame was lost presumably during the iconoclasm, that is, the attacks on Catholic art during the Reformation.
And we also know that this painting was much coveted by the Nazis and was actually stored in a salt mine during World War II to protect it. We're lucky we still have it today.
It is a small miracle, I think.
It is. Okay, so what do we have on the outside of the altarpiece? We have at the top some figures with scrolls and books, and those are prophets and sibyls who predicted the coming of Christ, the coming of a Messiah. And the moment that they predicted is actually unfolding right below them, and that is the scene of the Annunciation where the angel Gabriel is announcing to Mary that she is about to conceive Christ.
Gabriel over on the left panel, Mary 3 panels to the right, and then wonderfully empty space. Not empty, in fact, this fabulous cityscape, and then a kind of still life on the right middle panel, but nevertheless an unoccupied set of spaces that really suggest the opportunity for Christ's arrival.
And we have the usual trappings of the Annunciation. The angel Gabriel holds lilies, which are a symbol of Mary's purity, her sinlessness, her virginity. The angel Gabriel announces, and you can actually see words coming out of the angel's mouth. It's in Latin, Hail Mary, full of grace, blessed art thou among women. And Mary on the other side with the dove above her head, which represents the Holy Spirit, and words coming out of her mouth, her reply to the angel Gabriel coming out backwards, right to left instead of left to right, and upside down. And she says, Behold the handmaiden of the Lord. Backwards makes sense, right? Because she's speaking back to the angel. It's very interesting that the words are also upside down.
It makes us question who she's speaking to, doesn't it?
Perhaps to God, who's looking from above at the scene.
Everything in this set of panels, this middle set of panels, is very concrete and absolutely physical. And yet those words, because they're gold, but also because they're not, in a sense, attached to anything physically represented, are wonderfully ethereal and really, in a sense, speak to God.
That's true. And in a way, there is that tension between the writing, which is a kind of very medieval thing to do in a work of art, right? It reinforces the flatness of the image. And yet there's a tension between that and, as you said, the sort of physicality of everything else, a sense of space. The objects that are depicted are incredibly real as the light reflects on them. That cityscape that goes out into a distance where we can see figures and shadows and buildings and birds, or that still life on the right where we see the sunlight from the windows beautifully reflected, kind of attention to detail that is very unique to the Northern Renaissance.
These artists were miniaturists, and that attention to detail comes through even on this large scale. But while we're talking about the kind of concreteness of and the specificity of form, we don't want to say that this is the kind of naturalism or realism that we would have seen developed at this very time in Italy, because it's not. We're seeing a kind of awkward linear perspective, and the figures themselves look as if they might bump their heads if they actually stood up in this room.
That's right, and the space kind of seems to rush back, and also we're not seeing an attention to the reality of the human body that we would have seen in the Italian Renaissance. We have kind of drapery that seems to have a life of its own with lots of angular folds and almost seems to hide the body underneath. And we should say that the altarpiece is 11.5 feet high. We sort of forgot to say that. It's really large. It's made for a private chapel in the cathedral, in Saint Bavo's Cathedral in Ghent. and that belong to the patron, who we see below, Jodicus Vijd.
On the bottom left. So we have 4 figures, or rather 2 figures and then 2 sculptures. But that in and of itself raises a really interesting visual trickery. That is to say that we take the figures who are dressed in red on either side, the bookends, as real people, and then the sculptures in the middle carved of stone. But of course, this is all paint.
And the figures on either side are the patrons, and the figures who are represented as sculptures are the 2 St. Johns. And I think they had particular relevance for the chapel and for the family. It's also interesting to look at the patrons, especially Jodicus on the left, because there's that thing that you always see in the Northern Renaissance, which is this amazing ability to represent different textures, because of course the artists are using oil paint. And so that fur on his collar really seems like fur, and his skin really seems like the skin of an old man. It's just amazing.
And of course, oil paint will have a profound impact on the sense of this painting, but especially when we open it up.